Shruti. This is going to be my first lecture demonstration. I've never done something like this before, so let's see how it goes.
Yeah, happy to be part of it.
So today's topic is going to be a little bit different. We'll take a slight diversion from like how we did Tirupugars and mostly centered around some songs and stuff. We'll take a little diversion. So today's topic is going to be about Lakshana and Lakshya, which is basically science and art. Okay? So let me explain this title. It's going to get a little bit theoretical, and I'll try to make it as easy as it can be to understand. So in this case, in science and art, Lakshana is science and Lakshya is art. Okay? So Lakshana is science. Why? Because science is logical. Okay? So science is a little bit logical, there's some rules involved. However, Lakshya is more like a creative expression of those rules. So it's almost like when you're painting a painting. You have the color theory that you need to know, which is Lakshana, and then you use the color theory to paint a beautiful picture, right? So let's define this in terms of Carnatic music. So Lakshana is grammar, to put it in a short definition. So Lakshana is grammar. So it's like the grammatical structure and the principles and rules that govern a raga's expression. You can call it the rule book almost for like a raga. Let's see. Let me ask you guys a little joke. Okay. What do you guys think is the poorest raga? Mohana. Okay, this is an overused joke in Sukadhwani.
Why?
Why is it the poorest raga? Okay, it's a joke for Umamahesh sir and Raju sir. Balu sir. Basically, it is the poor ragam because it doesn't have any mani.
I'm sure this coming from Ramaji.
Yes. So let me explain. So we all know that Mohanam, the ragam doesn't have ma and ni, right? This is Lakshana because we're talking about the characteristics of the raga. So what makes Mohanam Mohanam? All the Avarohanam, Arohanam, Avarohanam, the fact that it doesn't have ma and ni, all of these things come under rules that govern the raga. These are the rules that you need to know about Mohanam so that you can present Mohanam in a more artistic way. Now let's talk about Lakshya. So in Sanskrit, Lakshya actually means goal. And this is kind of the loose definition, but the more Carnatic way to define Lakshya is turning Lakshana, the rules and the principles, into a creative expression of the raga. So how does a musician bring this structure and the rules and knowing that ma doesn't come or ma comes here into the actual expression of the raga? Okay? So Lakshya can actually be influenced by multiple different principles. Okay, so Lakshya can actually be dependent on the person who's embodying the raga. For example, if I was to present Mohanam, it would be influenced by my vocal ability, my creative personality. It can be influenced by pathantaram, it can be influenced by experiences. So in comparison to somebody else who maybe hasn't learned Mohanam from Ram Auntie, my Mohanam rendition would be a little bit more different than somebody else rendering Mohanam. There's just a lot of different components that influence the way you express the raga after Lakshana. So let me give you guys an example. Okay? Imagine you're a constructor. You want to build a building. Okay? So what do you need to build? You need the materials first. Then you need a concrete plan, right? You need a plan. You need to know engineering. You need to know math, geometry. You need to know, you have to have some kind of blueprint, right? To build a building. So once you have those, you can build a nice base for the building. You have a very strong, solid foundation, steel, concrete, whatever. Now, how does the building actually become a building, right? How do you beautify the building? You bring the creativity into it. You think about how much like natural light you want in the building. You think about what kind of plants you want in the building. You think about how many floors do I want in this building. All of these things you have to take into consideration. And just taking into account how I said different factors also influence your Lakshya. If you're a builder in Japan versus being a builder in Mexico, you have different like thoughts on what you want your building to look like, you know? So kind of like that. That's how we can tie Lakshya and Lakshana together. So basically using Lakshana, which is a strong foundation, and then building it up into this beautiful building is Lakshya. That's the goal, right? As we said in Sanskrit, Lakshya means goal. Okay. Now, let me ask another question. Ojas, do you think Lakshana is more important, or do you think Lakshya is more important? You think Lakshana is important? Okay. Idan, what do you think?
I also think that Lakshana is more important.
Lakshana is important. Okay. Lakshmi auntie, what do you think?
I think both are important.
Okay. So, the answer is, it depends. Okay. So we'll get into why does it depend. Okay. So again, let's take another analogy. Let's make it simple, right? So imagine you're a tourist. You see a beautiful mountain. You're visiting the mountain range, and you see this beautiful mountain. You're like, wow, it's so beautiful. You take out your phone, you take a picture, you put it on Instagram. That is essentially you just appreciating the beauty of the mountain. So you don't need any information about the mountain to appreciate the beauty. Okay? Similarly, imagine you're a hiker. You want to hike the mountain, you want to go to the top. How do you get to the top? You need to know the terrain, you need to know the elevation, you need to have the skills to get to the top of the mountain. All of these things. The rules or the kinds of conditions of the mountain, you need to know in order to traverse the path all the way to the top. So, let's again connect it back to Carnatic music. You are a listener. If you are a listener of Carnatic music, you don't practice Carnatic music necessarily, but if you are just simply somebody who loves to listen to Carnatic music, which I'm sure a lot of you love to listen to Carnatic music, all you need to know is to appreciate the beauty of the mountain. You don't need to know the elevation of the mountain. You don't need to know if there's rocks or if there's a waterfall. You don't need to know any of this. You can just simply sit back, relax, look at the mountain, appreciate it, and move on with your life. Okay? However, if you're a singer, you want to perfect the ragam. You want to you want to pursue the ragam. You want to perfect it. You want to get to the top of it, right? So when you want to do that, you have to know all these rules. You need to know Lakshana. So for the singer, the Lakshana becomes more important. But for the listener, Lakshya becomes important. So it just depends on who you are. Okay. So, if Lakshana is the foundation of a raga, how much of a raga can we really understand from just looking at the rules in the book? Okay? Because we have Lakshana defined in our book. We have that Varnam book. Before every Varnam, there's a small 2 lines of Arohanam, Avarohanam, right? Just by looking at that, can you tell the full Lakshana of the ragam? let me sing a raga. I want you guys to identify it, okay? Sari Gama Pada Ni Sa Sa Ni Da Pa Ma Ga Ri Sa. What raga is this? So, Maya Madhava Gauli is actually a comparatively easy raga. Not every ragam is like easy. You can say a ragam is easy, but it's easier to pursue just by looking at it in the book. I sang that Arohanam Avarohanam with no gamakams, just plain notes. But you guys are able to understand that it's Maya Madhava Gauli, right? So, this essentially comes from the fact that some ragams have straightforward lakshanas. Okay, they may not have to be understood like completely, at least for the other person to understand that hey, this is Maya Madhava. Okay, so the difficulty of a ragam depends on how difficult it is to grasp the lakshana, and the more difficult the ragam, the more nuanced it is, because there's so many more minute details I need to get into. Okay, so similarly, actually before I go next, as I said not every ragam is easy, right? So, but since Maya Madhava Gaulai is an easy ragam to grasp, that's why the Sarali Varse and the first couple of lessons that we learned, the first lesson, Sarali Varse, Janta Varse, Alankarams, everything is composed in Maya Madhava Gaulai because it's an easier ragam to grasp. Okay? Now, let's go to another raga. Okay? I'll sing it in the same way with no gamaka. Okay? Sari Gama Pada Ni Sa Sa Ni Da Pa Ma Ga Ri Sa. Can somebody in this first two rows tell me what raga is this? What is it? Now I'll sing it with gamakam and then you tell me what the raga is, okay? Sari Gama Pada Ni Sa Sa Ni Da Pa Ma Ga Ri Sa. Now tell me what raga it is. Todi. Okay? See how different it is.
I'll explain that. Listen.
Was that even close? No, right? That's why Lakshya is very important. Just knowing that, okay, Sa, Re1, Ga1, that's not going to help you. In this case, Todi. Because that's why it's known to be more complicated raga. Right? So, until you truly understand the Lakshana and bring in your creative expression, listen to artists and dive deeper into that ragam, you cannot fully bring the life of that ragam into the expression of it. Okay? So let's take a beautiful example of Lakshana. So I'm going to present a small Chitte Swaram, and in this Chitte Swaram you'll hear we said Todi has sAdhanA Gandharam, Gavan. Okay? So you'll hear 18 variations of sAdhanA Gandharam. Okay? Just one swaram, but you'll hear almost 18 different ways to express that note. And I'll explain to you why that's crucial, that you know all those different ways to sing that swaram. Okay? ga re sa ga re ga 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 ma ma ga re sa ga re re ga re re ga re re ga ga sa ga re ga 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 ma ga pa ga da ga ni da ma ga ma da ma ga ma ni da ga ma pa da ni ga sa ga re ga 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 ma ga pa ga da ga ni da ma ga ma da ma ga ma ni da ga ma pa da ni ga ga ma ga ma pa da ni ga ga ma pa da ni sa re ga ga ma ga re sa ni ga ga re da ma ga re ga ga ma ma da da ni ga ga re sa ni da ni sa ga ga re ni da ni sa ga ga ma ni da ma ga re sa re ga ja ga ma sa. So, were you guys able to hear that there were so many different variations of just ga? Right? We have ga, ga, and then ga. See how different they are, right? They're the same note. Both of them are ga one, but they're expressed so differently. Why is this important? Because imagine you, like 20 years down the line, all you have is a piece of paper. You have your few notes that I just sang. I just sang some swarams. You have the page with the swarams. In Sukadhwani, we have a beautiful blessing from our teachers. We have such detailed notations. We have the curves, we have little shakes, and everything we have it notated, right? And so the students, there's some students who notate, and even Rama auntie, Pavan Anna, they all help us get these notations. So imagine, like down the line, you just have this piece of paper. There's some swarams on it, some squiggles on it. Can you look at it and sing it like how it's supposed to be sung? Not fully, right? Only to some extent. This is why Lakshya is so important. So just looking at the piece of paper, just saying, okay, it needs to go up, down, you cannot bring the full depth of the ragam into how it's supposed to be sung. Okay? So now let's transition into more details about Lakshana. Okay? So Lakshana has a few components. Okay? It's more than just rules. There's some other components that go into it. Lakshana essentially means characteristic. So within this characteristics, we have three types. We have Ghanam, Nayam, and Deshikam. Let me explain what they are. So they help define how a ragam is constructed and the kind of musical personality that the ragam embodies. Okay? So basically it's a way to classify a ragam. Some ragams can be either like 80% Ghanam, some of them are 80% Nayam. None of them are, I wouldn't say every ragam is 100% one of the classifications. Each ragam has its own different kind of phrases, but what it's mostly composed of is what we classify it as. So, the first classification is Ghanam. So, Ghanam is basically describing a ragam that's weighty, very like majestic, it's very rich. Like when you hear it, you can feel how heavy the ragam is. These ragams have a very, very like strong structure, and there's very elaborate improvisation that mastering these ragams is like a very good practice. So Naiveli sir apparently says practicing tanam in these ghana ragams is super crucial. Ghana ragams like Nata, Nate, Varali, Shri, Gaulai. So those kind of ragams are ghana ragams. They're very, like there's depth, there's weight, and you can feel it when you sing it, when you hear it also. Okay? So because of this depth and strength, many people say that this practicing ghana ragams is very important. So let me demonstrate some tanam for you guys in a ghana ragam. Okay? So should I let you guys guess the ragam, or do you want me to tell you what it is? You want to guess it?
I don't know that.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Usually some of the different.
Like light. Thank you.